U.S. and Iran exchanged fire in the Strait of Hormuz, with the U.S. military saying it intercepted Iranian attacks and responded with self-defense strikes. President Donald Trump claimed great damage was done to the Iranian ships, while Tehran accused Washington of breaching their ceasefire. The damaged South Korean-operated cargo vessel that caught fire near the Strait of Hormuz has arrived at Dubai port. South Korean investigators are now preparing a full-scale probe into the cause of an explosion on the ship. Marking Parents' Day here in Korea, President Lee Jae-myung expressed gratitude and respect to parents across the country, saying they deserve to enjoy their later years without worry. He also said the government is working to expand job opportunities for seniors and reform the pension system. Tensions are escalating in the Middle East after the United States has confirmed that its military carried out strikes against Iranian targets in what it described as a response to unprovoked attacks in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran accused the United States of breaching a ceasefire by aggressively targeting an Iranian oil tanker. Our Kim Bo-kyung starts us off. The U.S. military carried out airstrikes on Iran's Qeshm port and Bandar Abbas on Thursday local time, according to Fox News, citing a senior official. Iran's semi-official Mehr news agency had reported earlier that explosions were heard around Qeshm Island near the Strait of Hormuz and in Bandar Abbas in southern Iran. Iran, meanwhile, accused the U.S. of violating the ceasefire by targeting two ships. According to Iran's IRIB broadcaster, a spokesperson for Iran's Khatam al-Anbiya Central Headquarters said Washington targeted two ships in the Strait of Hormuz and that enemy forces were hit by Iranian missile attacks and retreated.
Following these reports, an informed military official said that after the aggressive U.S. military targeted an Iranian oil tanker, hostile enemy units in the area of the Strait of Hormuz came under Iranian missile fire and, after sustaining damage, were forced to flee.
The fact that the two sides exchanged fire was confirmed, with U.S. Central Command saying that American forces intercepted unprovoked Iranian attacks and responded with self-defense strikes as U.S. Navy-guided missile destroyers transited the Strait of Hormuz toward the Gulf of Oman. In the statement, it said the U.S. eliminated inbound threats and targeted Iranian military facilities responsible for attacking U.S. forces, including missile and drone launch sites. It added that the Central Command does not seek escalation, but remains positioned and ready to protect American forces. U.S. President Donald Trump also confirmed the strikes on social media, saying that American destroyers were not damaged, but great damage was done to Iranian attackers. He told ABC News that the latest strike was just a light warning and that the ceasefire remains in effect. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News. A Korean-operated cargo vessel damaged by an onboard explosion and fire near the Strait of Hormuz has arrived in Dubai, where South Korean investigators are preparing to launch a full-scale probe into the cause of the incident. Iranian officials are denying any involvement as authorities work to determine whether the blast was caused by an external attack or an internal defect aboard the ship. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
A cargo vessel operated by South Korean shipping company HMM, damaged by an onboard explosion and fire near the Strait of Hormuz, has arrived in Dubai, where South Korean authorities are preparing to launch a full-scale investigation into the incident. According to HMM and local officials, the HMM Namu was towed from waters near Al-Quwain in the United Arab Emirates and reached the Dubai port area shortly after midnight Thursday, about 12 hours after towing operations began. The vessel will now head to Dry Docks World Dubai, the Middle East's largest ship repair facility, where investigators will inspect the ship and begin repair work. A South Korean government team made up of investigators from the Korea Maritime Safety Tribunal and forensic fire experts from the National Fire Agency is expected to intensify its probe. Investigators are focusing on whether the explosion and fire were caused by an outside attack, including the possibility of Iranian involvement, or by an internal issue, such as a mechanical defect aboard the vessel. So far, authorities say there are no signs of hull damage consistent with a military strike, and the ship was reportedly neither listing nor taking on water at the time of the incident. Meanwhile, senior Iranian lawmaker denied Tehran's involvement during video talks on Thursday with South Korean lawmaker Kim Seok-gi. According to Kim, Iranian Parliament Committee Chairman Ibrahim Azizi said that if Iran had attacked a Korean vessel, the government or military would have officially announced it. South Korea's foreign ministry also declined to comment directly on Iranian media reports, saying establishing the facts and determining the exact cause of the incident remained the government's top priority. 이승재, Arirang News.
A U.S. trade court has ruled against U.S. President Donald Trump's latest 10% global tariffs, saying the across-the-board duties were not justified under a 1970s trade law. The U.S. Court of International Trade sided with a group of small businesses that challenged the tariffs, which took effect in February, with the ruling only applying to the plaintiffs in the case. In a 2-1 decision, the court said the Trade Act of 1974 was not intended to address the types of trade deficits cited by Trump. The businesses argued the tariffs were an attempt to bypass a Supreme Court ruling that struck down Trump's 2025 tariffs imposed under emergency economic powers. Responding to the ruling, the Blue House said on Friday that Korea will continue to closely monitor related developments, while seeking to maintain a balance of interests under its current tariff deal with the United States. On the local front, Korea's current account surplus reached a record high in March, fueled by a surge in information technology products like semiconductors and computer peripherals. According to preliminary data from the Bank of Korea on Friday, the country's current account reached a surplus of $37.33 billion in March. The figure is the largest ever monthly surplus and marks the 35th consecutive month in the black. The goods account posted a surplus of $35.07 billion as exports jumped nearly 57% compared to a year earlier. Exports saw growth in regions including the United States and Southeast Asia, but recorded a decline of over 49% in the Middle East. May 9th marks Europe Day, a day to celebrate the union of 27 member states following the Second World War. In the spirit of unity, the EU ambassador spoke with Arirang News to highlight how bilateral efforts with Korea are being made to build strength in times of uncertainty. Our Oh Soo-young reports.
As global crises expose new vulnerabilities, South Korea and the European Union are building up a more resilient partnership.
This is the second energy crisis we are experiencing in the span of only a few years. The first one for Europe, it was in the wake of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. Then we had to wean ourselves off oil and gas from Russia. But now, only a few years later, we see again our vulnerability vis-à-vis fossil fuel.
Speaking to Arirang News ahead of Europe Day, EU Ambassador to Korea Ugo Astuto said recent crises highlight the need to accelerate the transition toward greener and more resilient economies. A leading diplomatic advocate in Seoul for making the green transition, Astuto said Korea and Europe are already closely cooperating with their green and digital partnerships launched in 2023.
On the one hand, for instance, in the multilateral scene with the climate negotiation. And then bilaterally, focusing on some sectors that can be particularly promising. Let me mention batteries, where Korea is a major champion worldwide. Offshore wind, where the European Union can bring considerable expertise. Or the defining of the emission trading systems.
Economic security is another joint concern. Last month, the European Commissioner for Trade and Economic Security visited Seoul, launching a new strategic dialogue on trade, supply chains and technology.
We need to look at our vulnerabilities. We mentioned earlier energy. There are others, rare earth, just to mention one. And we need to look together how best to address these vulnerabilities, how to mitigate our dependencies, and how to foster our strategic autonomy.
This year marks the 76th anniversary of the Schuman Declaration, which laid the foundations for the EU after World War II, growing from 6 members in the 1950s to 27 countries and roughly 450 million people today.
The European Union is a project of peace. It's a project founded in respect for the rule of law, in respect for human rights, for international law, in the fact that might does not make right. And these are principles which are all the more relevant today, at least as relevant today as they were in the 1950s, as we face a more and more erratic world scenario where we see a return to imperial wars in Europe emanating from Russia. So we need to make it clear again our belief in these principles and values which can work for the global common good.
Shared principles, he said, are drawing Korea and the EU closer together as like-minded democracies facing common challenges. He hopes to see a Korea-EU summit further expand the strategic partnership. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung marked Parents' Day on Friday by pledging stronger support for parents who, in his words, devoted their entire lives to their families. In a Facebook post, Lee expressed gratitude and respect to parents across the country, saying they deserve to enjoy their later years without worry. He added that the government is working on measures such as expanding job opportunities for seniors and reforming the pension system. President Lee and First Lady Kim Hae-kyung also attended a Parents' Day ceremony this morning, hosted by the Korean Senior Citizens Association. They are the first couple met with the parents of firefighters and police officers who were killed in the line of duty. The National Assembly is set to make another attempt this afternoon to vote on a constitutional amendment proposal. This comes as the previous vote held on Thursday was declared invalid, with the session falling short of the required two-thirds of lawmakers. The main opposition People Power Party continues to criticize the proposal as a rushed constitutional revision and is reportedly planning to boycott this session as well. The amendment, backed by 6 parties, including the ruling Democratic Party, would strengthen safeguards regarding martial law declarations. Its preamble would also highlight pro-democracy movements. On the technology front, a South Korean startup and the country's brain pool are stepping up to respond to demands for innovative ways to uncork interconnection bottlenecks. Our business correspondent Park Jun-an tells us more.
Nvidia's venture capital arm Nventures has made its first investment in a Korean startup, participating in a $76 million Series B funding round. The company develops plastic tube technology to replace conventional copper wires and optical cables inside AI data centers. This aims to resolve critical data bottlenecks, addressing the industry's growing need for faster and more efficient methods to transfer massive amounts of data.
It offers 10x more reach of copper interconnect and 3x lower power consumption, 3x lower cost, and then it gives 1,000 times better latency compared to optical interconnects.
Having already worked with Nvidia for over 2 years, the CEO added that his company will work hard to dominate the global interconnections market, not only in data centers, but also in the automotive and consumer electronics sectors. The startup's core technology was born here at the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, or KAIST. Students here don't just study science. Here at KAIST, the message is clear. It is time for Korea's brightest minds to showcase their technological capabilities in the global stage. By developing new technologies and collaborating with global AI players, Korea is proving its role as a potential AI leader. Professor Bae Hyun-min, a co-founder of Point2 Technology and director of the Institute for Startups at KAIST, has been teaching students there since 2009. He said his experience of starting a business while studying in the US taught him many aspects of the startup process, and that he wanted his students to learn from his experiences and eventually start their own businesses as well.
Because KAIST has strong research infrastructure and manpower to plan and develop new ideas, it was relatively easier to secure research funding. That allowed us to spend several years building prototypes. And once we started seeing meaningful results, we were able to attract investors and commercialize the technology.
With a commitment to fostering a robust startup environment, Professor Bae said he will do his utmost to help the next generation of engineers translate their research into global success stories. Park Jun-an, Arirang News, Daejeon.
Content creators from around the world are taking on a new role as digital ambassadors for South Korea. The Culture Ministry has put together the 7th K-influencer cohort, bringing together creators from nearly 100 countries to share Korean culture with global audiences. Our correspondent Cho Young-eun reports.
Global content creators selected by the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism as K-influencers have officially begun their activities to serve as ambassadors introducing Korea through social media. The launch ceremony for the 7th K-Influencer Academy was held Thursday in Seoul, with around 100 foreign creators residing in Korea attending in person, alongside Deputy Minister Kong Hyung-sik. The 7th K-Influencer cohort includes creators with already established global audiences, producing multilingual content featuring everyday life in Korea.
When people visit Korea, I want to show them not only Seoul, but also other cities where they can have fun. Many foreign visitors only know the famous tourist spots, but I hope to introduce more diverse regions of Korea.
One of the ceremony's highlight was a talk show introducing the K-Influencer Academy program, where creators with large subscriber bases shared insights and experiences from building global audiences. Participants also emphasized that creating meaningful content goes beyond simply entertaining viewers online, as they hope to introduce broader and more diverse sides of Korea.
It is an honor to represent global influencers and participate in this K-Influencer program. I hope this opportunity helps more foreigners create meaningful content introducing Korea to the world.
Creators added that they hope the program will encourage more foreigners to communicate Korea's culture and values with audiences around the world.
From the beginning, I believed the most important thing was not simply making entertaining content, but creating content that conveys value and offers something people can learn from.
The Cultural Ministry said it evaluated applicants based on their content planning abilities and commitment to promoting Korean culture, ultimately selecting 1,152 from more than 4,000 applications. This year's recruitment drive attracted the highest number of applicants since the program began in 2020, representing the growing interest in Korean culture. A ministry official said K-influencers are more than just content creators, describing them as ambassadors promoting Korean culture to the world, adding that the government plans to continue expanding educational programs and support for participants. Cho Young-eun, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. U.S. President Trump on Thursday gave the European Union until July 4th, America's Independence Day, to fulfill its side of a trade deal struck last year. He warned that tariffs on EU goods, including cars, will jump to, quote, much higher levels if the deadline is missed. Trump said he issued the ultimatum during a, quote, great phone call with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, in which both leaders also agreed that Iran must never acquire a nuclear weapon. The trade deal reached in Scotland last July requires the EU to cut tariffs on U.S. industrial goods to zero. But legislation to implement the deal has moved slowly through the European Parliament. Trump had already threatened last Friday to raise EU car tariffs from 15% to 25% over the delays. Von der Leyen said good progress is being made toward early July compliance. Some of America's most powerful CEOs are joining President Trump on his trip to Beijing next week. The heads of Nvidia, Apple, Boeing, Exxon, Blackstone, Citigroup, Qualcomm, and Visa have all been invited. Trump's summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping has already been rescheduled once due to the Iran war, and Chinese officials have expressed unease about holding the meeting before the conflict is resolved. Boeing is watching the trip particularly closely. Its CEO said last month the company is counting on the Trump administration to unlock a long-awaited Chinese order. The summit is to take place on May 14th and 15th. Health authorities across 4 continents are racing to track down passengers who left the hantavirus-stricken cruise ship before the outbreak was detected. More than 24 people from at least 12 countries disembarked on April 24th without any contact tracing, nearly 2 weeks after the first passenger had already died on board. A Dutch flight attendant who briefly came into contact with an infected passenger is showing symptoms and is being tested in isolation in Amsterdam, potentially becoming the first known person outside the ship to be infected. The cruise ship is now sailing toward Spain's Canary Islands, with more than 140 passengers and crew still aboard. The WHO says the risk to the wider public remains low. A rare 6-carat blue diamond, rated both fancy vivid blue and internally flawless, is heading to auction at Sotheby's in Geneva next week with an estimated price of up to $12 million. The auction house said on Thursday that the stone, sourced from South Africa's Cullinan mine, combines intense color, 0 internal flaws, and no fluorescence. Sotheby's calls this combination exceptionally scarce, even among blue diamonds. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
After overnight rain cleared out, much of the country is enjoying sunny skies. Today's Parents' Day in Korea, and despite the sunshine, temperatures will stay below season norms with strong winds. But the weekend looks like it's going to be much warmer. By Sunday, Seoul could reach 25 degrees Celsius, feeling more like early summer. Meanwhile, except for Gangwon-do province, where clouds and showers may linger through the afternoon, UV levels will be very high across most regions. So if you're heading outside, hats or sun protection should come in handy. And this afternoon, most regions will be seeing highs ranging between 20 and 22 degrees Celsius. Seoul, Gwangju getting up to 20 degrees Celsius.
That's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned.